In this episode of Supply Chain Now Radio, Trey Closson, Director of Customer Solutions with Flexport, discusses how the Internet of Things is enabling global visibility, autonomous trucks, and how clean big data helps with predictive analytics and risk mitigation.
So next on Supply Chain Now Radio, we're really pleased to be featuring Trey Closson, Director of Customer Solutions at Flexport. Good morning, Trey.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for having me on.
So for those of you that may not know, all three of you, Flexport is a supply chain powerhouse resource that's really on the move with explosive growth. Leading off, Trey, I'm always curious about kind of your journey to get to this point to be, part of a cutting edge supply chain provider and services and technology provider. Talk about your background.
Yeah, for sure. So I have a non-traditional background for logistics, which seems to be the traditional background. So in school, I studied philosophy, which is definitely not what most people study when coming into this world. But I was very fascinated by international trade. And I went to school at Furman University in South Carolina. So I was right in the backyard of
The
BMW.
fighting paladins.
Exactly, Purple Paladins.
Purple.
So I was right in the backyard of BMW manufacturing, and I saw how important BMW was to the local economy in Greenville and in South Carolina overall. And I knew that I wanted to play a part in that in some way. I didn't know what that looked like, so I sought out different companies in the area and was fortunate enough to snatch on with a freight forwarder. I'd never heard of that term until I interviewed with them. Snatching on with a freight forwarder that was providing services, air freight services for BMW. We managed the air freight supply chain out of Germany for them, and I just became immediately fascinated with the entire world. And I was fortunate thereafter to join another freight forwarder, a large freight forwarder here in Atlanta, where I managed and led a team that were account managers for the largest brands in the Southeast. And so throughout the course of my time with that freight forwarder, I was able to access the leading minds of these companies, and we did an excellent job of serving the brands, but there was always a disconnect between what the customers were truly expecting and wanting to transform their businesses and what the technology enabled that vision to come to bear. And so a number of us in the industry thought, okay, that there must be a better way, but that there are just significant barriers to entry in the logistics world. It's extremely expensive. It's highly regulated, so it's extremely challenging. So I didn't expect that there would be many startups that would come into the space. However, Flexport came in to be around 2014, 2015, and our customers started to ask about what Flexport was doing. I at that point had not heard of them, and as customers start saying, okay, we're considering moving over to this other company, it bears the reason that they should investigate them. And so Flexport has just experienced explosive growth in the last few years as we've been seeking to transform the global supply chain. And so just to tie it all together, I went to Georgia Tech to understand innovation and to understand operations and the application to the physical world and the applying technology to the business world, and not just creating different technologies like social media applications. I found that's really going to unlock a lot of value in the global economy, enabling the physical world to be transformed and to add extra value in the technological world.
So as we all know, our good friends over at Georgia Tech, they're a big piece of the talent equation, which makes Atlanta such a great supply chain capital, world-class supply chain management institution. So to really go out there and earn business on the global business landscape, technology is a big player, and clearly
Exactly.
Flexport's doing some really neat things from a supply chain technology standpoint. But before we dive into what Flexport's doing, talk about some of the hot technology subjects, items going on in supply chain now.
Yeah, for sure. So the major trend in the supply chain world is digitization. So it's making the supply chain digital. The way that we view this at Flexport is really making making the physical world digital. So the three trends that I'm going to talk about that this morning are Internet of Things, so IoT, autonomous trucking, and predictive analytics. So you mentioned earlier the sensors, so Internet of Things. A number of customers, they not only want to understand when their cargo will arrive to its final destination, but they want to be able to understand what's happening to that cargo while it's in transit, whether it's ocean freight, air freight, or trucking. And so Internet of Things, it enables our customers to understand exactly where their cargo is. So this is specifically applicable to high value cargo that's extremely expensive. It's very important to know where those goods are, because that's important to their bottom line. Furthermore, it understands temperature information. So this is applicable to industries like pharmaceuticals and various other food groups and things like that. And also, you mentioned LL Bean earlier too. Temperature can have an impact on finished goods as well. And there's just so many other applications to the Internet of Things. And so we've seen application where various sensors are applied to, whether it's a container, a sea freight container, or actually put into a box or put onto an actual finished product.
Depending on what level of accuracy and visibility they're looking at.
Exactly. Yeah. And so that gives the extra layer of understanding of what's happening to that material, because that has an impact on the final product.
I was hoping that sensor technology gets really inexpensive so I can put it on all my kids' shoes so they lose week in and week out. So, moving past digitization, autonomous trucking, let's talk more about that. We talked about the driver shortage. Let's talk about kind of where does that stand? How soon are we going to see driverless trucks on 285 here in Atlanta?
Yeah. So the technology exists in varying degrees right now. It's whether the autonomous trucks can have existence with the regulations. And so Flexport actually has purchased one of Tesla's first semis. So when
cool.
when Elon Musk announced that Tesla was manufacturing semis, Flexport was one of the first companies to purchase one. Our CEO bought it on a cell phone. So it kind of stands, or it demonstrates where we are in this world with the supply chain, that you can buy a truck on your cell phone.
So next time we have you here, you're going to be on a rocket?
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
that's actually how I got here.
Oh, really?
Well, when you say autonomous, can you define that? Like, does that mean there's no driver at all? Is the driver in another seat? Like, what does autonomous mean?
Yeah, so it means that the truck is able to maneuver itself. And so there's typically a trucker that's in the truck, but he doesn't have to necessarily, he or she does not necessarily have to be actively engaged.
They could be watching Netflix.
Yes, they could be watching Netflix or resting or whatever the case may be.
And the truck is driving to the destination, like making turns, or is it only just staying on the highway and like going straight?
Yeah, so right now the technology that exists, it's typically on highway, and so the truckers are engaging when you're having to maneuver the truck more specifically, so making turns, making deliveries, backing in.
So it's not getting off at an exit, waiting at a red light, turning down and...
Yeah, not yet. Yeah, yeah. So it stands to reason that the technology will get to that point. But I think that the biggest hurdle there is really the regulation. But the problem that it's solving is a tremendously important problem in the supply chain world, because as we mentioned earlier, there's a significant shortage of drivers, about 900,000. And specifically within this year, there's been a mandate, the ELD mandate, that it electronically logs the hours for truck drivers. And so it has significantly reduced the overall capacity in the market.
Yep.
In different areas, it's between 5 and 33%. So that means that it's driving costs up significantly if you can get a trucker. And in some cases, shipments are being delayed because truckers are not available.
And then, but this period of time they're driving on the highway, that's the vast amount of time.
Yes, right? Exactly.
So like if it's 0 to 100 is all their time, what percentage of time is it like highway driving where autonomous?
Yeah. So like you said, the most significant aspect of the transit is really the highway. And so I would say that it's between 75 and 90%, depending on where it's going.
So then if we can be okay with or be comfortable, that this is again a human problem, right, John? That humans are always getting in the way of these things. We just have to wrap our heads around that we're okay with this.
Yes.
Right? Because the technology is there for it to happen. We just have to kind of mentally be okay.
We must convince Lee Cantor.
Well, you don't have to convince me. I'm on board too. But it's because the truck can drive itself for 80% of the time. And then we can take that kind of mental burden off of the trucker.
Right.
So they don't have to be like awake and paying attention.
Yes. Yeah. And so it really is the regulation piece that people become comfortable with trucks that are driving themselves.
So So fascinating topic, and I can only imagine how this can address some of the biggest challenges we have in supply chain. So looking forward to hopefully getting that adopted and seeing some of the technology. It's really neat that Flexport is teaming up with Tesla and experimenting with that whole innovation. So let's touch on real quickly clean big data, which is a really neat theme that John and Elba and Trey and we were talking about in kind of the bullpen session.
Right.
Talk more about that.
Yeah. So really for a long time, we have had big data. We've had large swaths of data available to us, but for the most part, it has not been clean. So in the supply chain world, it's been missing timestamps, events that are transpiring over the course of cargo moving. But now, Flexport especially, but across the board, we have clean data where we're actually able to tell our customers what has happened with their supply chain, what is happening, and then now that we have this big clean data, we are working to provide what will happen, so the predictive analytics piece. And so not just looking at a backwards view of a supply chain, but understanding with some degree of certainty what will happen in the supply chain, so that you can do risk mitigation. That's a significant part of the supply chain world is understanding risk and mitigating that risk. So we will
big topic.
Yeah. So we will be able to provide services that can give some degree of predictability of an event occurring, and if it doesn't occur, then there can be discounts associated with that.
So on that note, moving into some of the ways that Flexport helps customers, because it probably there's some common threads between some of the technology topics you talked about. Let's talk about how you help customers, and what are some of the challenges that your team is taking on to help customers solve their problems and ideally grow their business more profitably.
Right, exactly. So as you mentioned earlier, Flexport is a full-service freight forwarder and customs broker. So we do what the traditional freight forwarders do. We're just enabled by technology. If you look at the top 25 freight forwarders, none of them existed before the advent of the internet. So it's extremely challenging to build an operating system, a world around new technology. And so Flexport is that freight forwarder that's enabled by technology. Our mission is to fix the user experience in global trade. And so that's an extremely lofty goal, but it's an inspiring one because we believe that if we're successful, we will make trade more free, more seamless, and easier. And anytime that you can make something that is the foundation of the global economy easier and more affordable, it has a significant impact on the world. And so that mission really drives every day what we're doing, and it excites us, it motivates us to perform for our customers. And so I am largely responsible for, here in Atlanta, dealing with the largest brands that the Flexport is engaging with. So
like Supply Chain Now Radio?
Yeah, exactly. So the customers that I'm working directly with are Bridgestone and Georgia Pacific, located here in the Southeast. And so the challenges that we're solving with them, it's a large global transformation effort where they want to understand what's specifically occurring in their supply chain. They want to understand the exceptions that are occurring, and they want to utilize our technology to eliminate the waste throughout the course of their supply chain. So it's understanding the technology needs, but then applying our service model to that as well. And we look at total cost of ownership and not just cost of transactions. And so I think that's a really important piece here is looking at the total cost of ownership throughout the supply chain and not just what does it cost to move a container from point A to point B. And
big picture, looking at the big picture.
Exactly, yeah. And so if we can provide data on what is happening and we can provide predictive capabilities of what will happen in the supply chain, then we can have that global transformation effort. And the way that we view our technology is not that it's eliminating people or eliminating jobs, but more so it's enabling the folks that are working, that are the logistics experts, to be able to work firsthand on solving problems as opposed to just entering data and understanding what's happening in the supply chain. And so it's enabling us to level up and become more value-added and consultative in designing supply chain solutions.
And Trey, we could probably spend several hours with both Flexport and AGL in terms of all the different ways they're helping customers. But you're going to be on the panel at the Georgia Logistics Summit. You're moderating the Technology Disruptors panel, which seems very fitting.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So I forgot to mention earlier, I wanted to point out too that we have recently announced that we are moving into new office space in Atlanta, in Midtown Atlanta. And so we have seen that our customers have experienced, or that our customers are demanding our services and what we have to offer. And so we're expanding into smaller business segments and our mid-market segments here in Atlanta. So we'll be able to not only serve the Atlanta market, but we'll be able to serve the Southeast as well. And so we see that Atlanta is such a significant piece to the supply chain world. And we want to be able to be a big part of the transformation effort here.
Yeah, they're working on autonomous radio hosting.
I will be replaced very soon. I'll be the first one.
So going back to the Georgia Logistics Summit, so I will be moderating the Tech Disruptors panel there. And so the topics that we'll discuss, and this is the third year for the panel in its existence, and the topics that we'll discuss are trends that are impacting either the shipper supply chain or logistics service providers. So it'll be our panelists will present for 10 to 15 minutes on whatever topic they choose, so whether it's Internet of Things, predictive analytics, autonomous trucking, blockchain, et cetera. And then we'll have a moderated discussion for about an hour on those various topics and how they are impacting the supply chain world.
So Business Radio X charged us with bringing in, excuse me, goodness gracious. So Business Radio X charged us with bringing in the rock and roll stars of the supply chain industry, and we are delivering today. We've got John, Trey, and Elba, who all are going to be big parts of the Georgia Logistics Summit. So, hey, Liam, we're trying to make our a good deliverable.
Hitting it out of the park.
That's right. So, Trey, really appreciate you stepping in and sharing some perspective. I wish we had more time to spend on all the different things Flexport's doing, but you're hiring left and right.
Yes.
So not only if you want to learn more about what Flexport is doing, all the neat things, cutting edge things, but check them out. Check out their job listings at flexport.com.
Yes,
very
correct.
simple.
Yeah, so we are heavily recruiting. Our team is rapidly expanding. So if you're the smartest person you know, please come join us.
So you're looking for all those philosophy majors out
exactly.
there, right?
Yeah, people that think creatively.
Great. Trey Closson, thank you for joining us from Flexport. Appreciate that.